Oh, I think we're live. Good morning. Good morning. Any minute now, it's going to pop up. Yes. Good morning, everybody. We are live. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. And today is September the 11th. So obviously, it's a very special day. It's a very, very special day for, I think, all of America. But it's also, I think, a very special day for a lot of people around the world who were so affected and so shocked by what happened here in America 10 years ago. Yes, it's been 10 years. It's hardly believable that it's been that long. And I'm sure for all of you who are listening, all of you who were affected personally by this terrible tragedy, I'm sure that today is one of those days where you're saying to yourself, has it really been 10 years? It feels like a lifetime.
20 years.
But it feels just like yesterday. Is it 9 years, Chris, or 10 years?
2001. So this is 2021.
So that's 10 years, right?
20.
Oh, okay. Anyway, whatever it is, we're going to, because we're rarely on a show on a particular day or date of something happening. So I thought that as Saturday mornings, as most of you know, is story time, I thought it would be appropriate to tell a story of something that happened that relates to the terrible tragedy of 9/11 2021, right? No, 2001, sorry. I'll get it right in a minute. So, first of all, let's say good morning to my spirit guide, Grey Eagle, who is always standing to my right here. And I'd like to say good morning to Chris. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Rosemary. Good morning, everyone.
And I'd like to say, obviously, good morning to all of you. Chris, do we have anybody on yet?
We do have people. They're just starting to log on now.
Okay, so I'll wait for a few minutes then before we begin our story time, because if you're going to hear a story, or if you're listening to a story, it's always good to hear it from the once upon a time stage, which is the beginning of the story. So, Chris, tell us, what have you been doing this week?
This week has just been a busy week at work and coming back from the Labor Day holiday. We had a big event at Fenway Park in Boston on Monday. And, we finally have some nice sunny sky today that I actually might get out and participate in.
Oh, good. Can you tell us a tiny bit about Fenway Park?
So my husband, who some of your followers know, passed away in June. And Mike was a volunteer in the local Williston Little League organization, amongst other things. Very big baseball fan, and did basically every role you could ever imagine in baseball, from volunteer on the field to coaching to umpiring to scheduling to announcing. I mean, scorekeeping, you name it, Mike did it. And the president and some of his board members nominated Mike for the Boston Red Sox Foundation Volunteer of the Year for Vermont. There were some from New Hampshire and Maine and Connecticut and Massachusetts. And their board read over the nomination and chose Mike as Volunteer of the Year posthumously. So each of the volunteers were invited to go pre-game to the Boston Red Sox Tampa Bay game on Monday, along with many of the Little League participants themselves. So the 10 to 12-year-olds, they got to be in the bleacher seats out in the field, and some actually got to come onto the field. So there was a big celebration and an honor that Mike received, and we stood in for him.
Sounds amazing. I think you went representing Mike, right?
Yes.
And your son went also? One of your sons went?
Yes, one of my sons and daughter-in-law.
Now, did they have a good game? Did you have a good game being there?
Well, I did for a crazy reason. For me, baseball has been tough since Mike's passing because everything about baseball reminds me of him. And let's just say I took along a little package with me when I was at the field, and now knowing um, he's got a permanent presence on the field makes me a little bit more happy to be watching baseball.
Well, he would love that. We're not going to say what's in the package. Suffice it to say, you left it there inadvertently, right? But nevertheless, you now, every time you think of Fenway Park and every time you think of, Babe Ruth, right? Who
Yes.
was, I think even I've heard of Babe Ruth. And I'm, first of all, British. Second of all, I'm not a big baseball fan, as you know, Chris. But yes, even I've heard of Babe Ruth. So I think Mike is up there with Babe Ruth having some presence on the field in one way or another. So now then, all right, let's get back to, I'll tell you a little bit about my life this week. It has been astounding. It's been amazing. You wouldn't believe it. So you know that saying, it never rains. What is it? What does it say?
It pours.
But it pours. Yeah, well then. Okay. So my daughter and I, thank goodness Reese was exempt from this, but my daughter and I have been walking around like the walking wounded because Samantha went to the beach last weekend. I think it was on Monday. And she came back with a little tiny thing on her finger. Looks like she'd been bitten. And then the next day it was hurting and looked a bit more swollen. And I did say to her, do you want me to sort of pierce it for you? And she wouldn't let me touch it. And then on Wednesday, it blew up into this major thing. She ended up in the hospital, in the emergency room. She went to the walking clinic, which is just around the corner from where she lives. They sent her to the emergency room. She arrived home somewhere at sort of like around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, having been there most of the afternoon and evening. They'd had to lancet and so on and so forth. And then the next day, I'm making this quick because then the next day she had to go back because it was even now more festered and blown up out of all proportion. And she had to have it cut and lanced again. So she has a big giant crater in her finger. It's a horrible looking thing, and so lots of pus. You don't really want to know anyway. But basically, she can't use her hand. She's been in a great deal of pain. She's much better this morning, I'm pleased to say. But she can't use her hand. I can't walk properly, and my right foot is still giving me problems. So I'm limping, and she's sort of whatever she's doing. And we tried to make the bed this morning between us, and in the end, I just shooed her out and said, "Leave it alone. I'm better. I didn't want her to knock her finger." So here we are. We are having such fun, and we're trying to make the best of this weekend because this weekend is Reese's last weekend. He goes back to school on Monday, as I'm sure many of you who have children or grandchildren, I'm sure they're heading back to school if they haven't been back to school already. So Reese is going back to school on Monday. So at some point, when Samantha is sufficiently healed and when I can sufficiently walk on my foot, I'm heading back to Florida. It's almost as if heading back to Florida feels like it's a relief, because I keep thinking I can lie in bed for 2 days and not have anybody talk to me or disturb me. And I mean, that seems like a little bit of heaven to me. Whether I'll do it or not is a whole other thing. But you know what I mean. Sometimes life gets you to the point where you just want to say, "Oh, can I just bury my head under the blankets and pretend these things aren't happening?" Right, Chris? I know you feel like that, with much more reason to feel like that than I do. And I know that there are many of you out there who really, don't you just want to put your head under the blankets and pretend that, and let life pass you by for a little while so you can take a breath and get yourselves together again. Anyway, I'm going to tell you a story today about 9/11, and this story hopefully is going to put everything into perspective, because 9/11 was one of the biggest tragedies I think that has ever occurred for the American people, and I think because it was the very first time. Now, please correct me, Chris, if I'm wrong. Aside from I was going to tell you, aside from the invasion that happened during the war
Pearl
to one
Harbor?
of Pearl Harbor, which really, yes, I think it was on American soil, wasn't it? But not actually in what we would consider the United States when you look at the map of the United States.
Not on the
So,
mainland.
so yes, thank you. So 9/11 was the first attack on the mainland soil. Let me get that right. Um, in history, I think. So I think it was so shocking for the American people to realize exactly how vulnerable they are, how vulnerable we all are, no matter which country we're in. You know, evil can reach us, war can reach us, and you know, these terrible things can happen to any one of us at any time. Uh, anyway, so today is the anniversary. It's a day when we think of those who lost their lives in the Twin Towers. It's the day that we um, celebrate. I'm going to use the word. I'm thinking, yes, I'm going to celebrate. It's the day when we celebrate all of those amazing, amazing heroes who went in to try to save so many people who were totally involved in the bombings. The police, the medics, the firemen, you name them. Uh, uh, Such amazing people. And then after that, all of the volunteers from not just all over America, but in fact all over the world, all of those volunteers who came in. And I know that many of those volunteers, many of those firemen and police and all of those, you know, ambulance services, what have you, all of those people, those who did survive have been so adversely affected. Health, you know, their health has been wrecked. So many people suffering today from the effects of what happened 9 or 10 years ago. So here we are, and I thought that I would tell you a little story. Now I have lots of stories about 9/11. I have when it happened, and then even after it happened, just as with anything else, just as with the I'm thinking of the Lockerbie air crash, where so many people died. I'm thinking of the tragedies around the world, the tsunamis, the natural disasters, but then I'm thinking also of those not so natural, deliberate sabotage on people who are so just so unexpected, unaware that they were even targets. So we're going to sort of celebrate them. We are going to celebrate their lives. We're going to celebrate who they were. We're going to mourn with their families, but we're also going to be joyful because we know, absolutely, those of you who are listening, I know you know, that we believe that they did not die. They left this earth, but they have very much survived. So I thought I would tell you a little story, just one tiny little story of my part in 9/11 after it happened. And I have had over many years many people who lost someone in not just in the 9/11 tragedies, but in many of the tragedies that have occurred throughout the world. So I'm going to tell you a little story. So little story, for those of you who are hiding your head under the blanket, pretending that doesn't exist, come out from under the blanket a little bit, peek out, or even if you don't want to peek out from under the blanket, listen anyway, because I think it might make you feel a little bit better and give you a little bit of hope. So here I was in a television studio, and there were a fair amount of people there, and I was asked to talk to a group of people who were very much affected by what had happened with 9/11. And I remember them sitting off to one side, away from the audience, more to one side, and my job was to see if I could see anything for them, to see if I could see anyone for them in the spirit world. And one of the first people to appear was a young man, he was great, such a large personality, very big personality, and he was a fireman, and he'd gone in, as many of the firemen did. He'd gone in to help with the rescue work, but unfortunately, as many of the rescue workers were, unfortunately, he too was killed. And he started talking to me, and he pointed me to one young lady sitting with this group, and he said to me, whispered in my ear, he said, "Rosemary, that's my fiance." And I said, "All right." And he said, I said, "So you're here to give her a message?" And he could not wait. As I've said, he had a huge personality. So I began describing him, and I said to the young lady, "I think this young man is here for you." And he talked about how he died, and he talked about 9/11. He talked about all of the horror that faced all of the rescue workers. He talked about the horror of what can happen when someone decides to drop a bomb for whatever reason it is. He talked about all of those horrors for a little bit, but then he started talking about the spirit world and how wonderful it was there, and how well he was doing. But there was a huge sadness in him as he was talking and trying to explain that we don't die, and trying to explain to this group of people who had come that their loved ones were there and they were still with them. And as he tried to explain to his fiancée that she didn't lose him, but there was this sadness in him because he knew that she would probably never recover from what went on here. And he needed to give her this absolute evidence, this absolute proof. And that's sometimes not an easy thing to do. You know, when we lose someone, when somebody dies, we might have an idea of what they might say or what they might talk about, or, you know, we have an idea. The amount of people who come to me wanting to talk to their loved ones in the spirit world, and they say, "Well, I know if it were he or she, they would have said this, or they would have talked about that," and that's not, unfortunately, how it works. Anyway, this young man, this sadness that was within him, his desperation to be able to give her some sort of evidence, some idea, some hope, some idea of the fact that it was really him, that I wasn't doing this, whatever people think, mind reading, or I might have read up on them or something. How I could have done that, I've no idea, because they were, as far as I know, randomly chosen, certainly not by me. Anyway, this young fireman wanted to give her an idea that, you know, something to hold on to. And as he began to talk to me, he began to tell me about how much he loved her. He laughed about them both being older than you would normally expect a young, you know, maybe early 20s or something couple might be heading into their wedding. And these two both were a little older than that, had come to find love a little bit later than most of us would perhaps normally suppose. But he was saying that he had been waiting for her for all of his life, and his wait was worth it. And as I'm telling her this, and as I'm talking to her about this, she's nodding. She's nodding, and she's crying. She's getting, very emotional about it all, but thrilled that he was talking to her, and thrilled that she could understand what he was saying to her. But then he said to me, her wedding dress is still in the closet. And I reached out to her and I held her hands and I said to her, he tells me your wedding dress is still in the closet. And they had been due to be married the Saturday after all of this had happened. So literally within a day or two prior to them getting married, he'd been killed in 9/11. Not only had she lost this wonderful man, she'd lost her hopes, her dreams. She'd lost the possibility of family, of children. She had a terrible loss. And I think people often don't realize that when we see people, young people who die, it isn't just the fact he was so young, she was so young, whatever. It's not just the loss of them, it's the loss of their future, the loss of their parents' hopes and dreams for them, the loss of, in this case, the fiance's hopes and dreams, not just for him but for herself as well. So on what was meant to be her wedding day was the day of grieving, and I'm not sure when the funeral was, but instead of a wedding, they were having a funeral. When I was shown this wedding dress, because I was taken into this young lady's bedroom and I saw the dress hanging up, when she had found out that her fiance had been killed, her wedding dress was hanging on the back of her bedroom door, but she put it into the closet not knowing what to do with it, and it was still there. How sad, how awful. But he said to her, I'm still your husband in my mind and in my heart, and you are still my wife in my mind and in my heart. He said many things to this his fiancée that day, and there were many others, other firemen, other groups of people, other people from the spirit world who came to talk to this group. It turned out they were a group, and I didn't know this at the time, but they were a group of either firemen's wives or husbands, or in this case fiancés, or mothers or fathers. They were all from one particular precinct that had lost so many of their firemen to this terrible tragedy. So there were many messages, lots of messages, and each person who was there received a message, and each person there received hope and encouragement to continue with their lives, because, as their loved ones said, we didn't die. And for this young fiancée, she has sort of stuck in my mind a bit. It's one of those stories that you remember. You know, I see many people over the years, I've seen hundreds, thousands of people given, I must have been thousands of messages over the last 25 years or so. And there are certain stories that stick in your mind. There are certain people who stick in your mind. But for the most part, because there are so many, you can't retain all of them. You can't retain all of the memories. I wish I could. This young lady, this lovely, lovely girl who was due to be married and had her life snatched away at the last minute, I have never seen her since then. I like to feel that she was given hope, that there would be a future, there would be a glimpse of a future for her. I wonder about her sometimes. I wonder, did she find a new love? Did she find happiness? Does she have children? What? What? What has happened to her in the last 10 years? And I hope and I pray that what has happened has been a good thing, a positive thing for her, a powerful thing for her. Because I know without a doubt that her fiance, although he considers himself her husband, because after all he would have been in the next day or two anyway, wouldn't he? I like to think that he walks with her still, he guides her still, and he keeps her safe. And I like to think that she knows that for a certainty. The end. That's it. That's my story for today. I just want to say before we go to questions, comments, and so on, if you could all spare a moment or two, and that's all it takes, like 30 seconds maybe, to send out a prayer to all of those who gave their lives, they sacrificed their lives to help in 9/11. I'd like to, if you could spare a moment for them and for their families and their loved ones who have to live, have had to live the last 10 years without them. My heart goes out to you. Please, everybody out there, send them your love, your hopes and your dreams for them, and your prayers too. Okay, Chris.
Gary says, "Thank you for getting me into St. Paul's Church after 9/11. I'll never forget being there."
Oh, well, Mary, you can't just say that. we want to know more. What happened, Mary?
No, I said Gary.
Oh, Gary. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Gary. Well, oh, thanks, Gary. How did I get you into St. Paul's Church, Gary? We we need more. We need more of the story. I've just told you I don't remember half of the stories that we have here, but yeah, tell us a little bit more about that, can you? Yes, we did actually do it. This was at another time. We did do another. We did a few events for the families of the victims um, of 9/11. We did. I did quite a few different things. I'm pleased to say, and we had a blast. But Gary, remind me what happened in the church. So, Chris, okay.
All right. So, one of the first questions that came in before you started telling your story is from, I think it's Miriam. How do I connect with a soulmate I don't know yet?
Um, I'm going to suggest because this, it can be a long process, but you've got to put yourself out there first of all, and you need to read soul signs. I was talking about this book a while ago, and talking about how amazing the book is, because it really is an amazing book, and it teaches us about soulmates, playmates, workmates. It teaches us about energy. It teaches us which type of energy is compatible with which other type of energy. We are going to be doing some webinars in the future concerning soul signs, which will help you to recognize perhaps your soul sign. But in the meantime, before that happens, I'm going to say read soul signs. And as one lovely person wrote in and asked, well, who wrote it? Who's the author of soul signs? And Chris and I had a little bit of a chuckle because it's me. So I wrote it. But it is an amazing book, and believe you me, it works every time. You just have to remember, all of you out there who are now racing to find this book, Soul Signs, you have to remember one thing only about soul signs is remember the golden key. You have to find your soul group. Yes, You're wondering what I'm talking about, aren't you? Those of you who haven't read the book, you have to find your soul group first. Because there are 13 soul signs in all. There are 5 groups. You need to find your group. And once you found your group, then there are only 3 soul signs in each group. So find your group, and then you can easily, by a process of elimination, find your soul sign. Once you found it, your soul sign, and you know how to do it, and it's worked for you, you can do it for anybody and everybody. They don't even have to know you're doing it. You just have to know them well enough to figure out what soul sign are they. Then you can figure out why you get on with this friend so much better than you get on with somebody else. You can find out how come you hate your boss because you can't understand him or her, but yet you love the second in command. You can understand every single thing about every single relationship, whether it's a good one or a bad one, or just a relationship that's rocky. And you can fix relationships. Soul Signs is that book. Soul Signs is what you need to learn about. Chris.
All right. So Gary answered you back. He said,
Okay.
I went with the William Morris Agency on New Year's Eve 2001.
Right.
18 hours of sweet and sour.
All right. All right. You've got to explain the 18 hours of sweet and sour now. Gary, stop muddling us up here. Okay, Chris, keep going.
Desiree's on. Hello, Rosemary.
Hi, darling.
Mickey passed today. Is she with my mom, and are they okay?
Yes, and thank you for letting us know. I am, because I know you won't be happy. I can say yes to you. You know I can say yes. But I am checking with Gregor, who puts his hands on my shoulder and says, don't worry anymore. And this is a good thing, my darling. It doesn't necessarily feel like it, but it is. Chris.
Eric's on, and he has a list of people that he would like added to the healing list.
Okay.
It would be really helpful for anybody who wants a name added to our healing list if you would email us, Chris,
Yes.
K-R-I-S, at rosemaryaltea.com, because picking out names out of a chat room is really hard for later after the show.
Yeah, and also, the the thing is that the chat room keeps moving all the time. So Chris, there you are, it just moved again. So as soon as somebody else puts in a chat, it moves, and it makes it very difficult for us to see what we're doing. And even after, when we close the show, it's still, we can't, because there are so many people in the chat room. If you want someone on the healing list, we are more than happy, very, very happy to do that for you. Again, please email us. I'm going to say it to you again, Chris, Kris, at rosemaryaltea.com. And if you put in the subject line healing, then we will know exactly what to do with it, and it makes life much easier for Chris. Remember, we have lots and lots of people in the chat room. We have lots and lots of people emailing us. So make it as easy for us to get back to you as you can, please. Put in the subject line what it is you're interested in. So if you're interested in a consultation, if you're interested in any of the books, if you know the title of the books, put it in there, or simply put in books. And then in your email, you can tell us what it is that you need. And again, for healing, put healing in the subject line, because as soon as we see it, we can sort of put it, in its little group and deal with it much quicker, much faster. Chris.
Anna Rita is on, saying, my husband Fernando, I always find shells. Is it him?
Well, my darling, I think you know. Why are you asking me? I know why you're asking me. You just want me to confirm it for you, don't you? Our loved ones in the spirit world, as you know, give us signs. And it seems that your husband finds sometimes these beautiful, amazing little shells that you can find. Sometimes not so little, Gregor tells me. And they're laughing. And yes, it's obviously his way of saying to you, I'm with you, I'm walking with you. I'm right there. Chris.
Mark says, "Good morning."
Good
And
morning.
this story was touching, moving, sorrowful for these losses, but I do know they did not die and that they live in spirit. So this question is for Gray Eagle. We know God knows when our day of rebirth is, and no
Yes.
one else. However, do our loved ones know the day we will join them, or will God share with them to prepare for our return?
Okay. I like this question. Um, I told a story a few weeks ago now about a patient of mine, Marjorie, who died of cancer. And I told how she had asked me before she died. Um, she was a bit nervous about traveling on her own, and there are a lot of people who are nervous about traveling on their own. And so she asked me before she passed, Rosemary, could you possibly go with me? Will you go with me? When I go to the other side, will you go with me? Now she wasn't asking me to die, she was asking me to be with her on her journey. So I said to her, well, I'd have to ask because I wasn't sure if I was going to be allowed or not. And I was, in fact, given permission, and I did go with Marjorie. I was there just prior to her arriving. Uh, so when I say I went with her, I was a little bit ahead of her. Um, and she and I was sitting in this room. I'm not going to tell the whole story. You can find the story either in The Eagle and the Rose or one of my other books. I can't remember which one it was in. Um, um, but it's an amazing story. I was sitting uh, in a sort of like in a long row, a little bit like, when you have musical chairs and you have chairs back to back down in a row, sort of like that. And we were all sitting there. There was a whole crowd of people, and I was way down at the bottom, sort of sitting on the end chair at the bottom. And I kept looking up towards the top, where all these people were, who kept looking at me, and then whispering amongst themselves, and looking at me again, and whispering amongst themselves. And I kept thinking, I know them. Where have I know them from somewhere. I didn't know what I was doing there. I didn't know that I was going to be seeing Marjorie. I just found myself in this room with these people whispering and looking at me, and then looking back to each other, and then looking back at me and smiling, and then looking back to each other again. And all of a sudden, oh gosh, it was amazing. I can still remember it now. All of a sudden, there was like a hush came over the room, and then people started whispering, "She's coming, she's coming, she's coming." And the excitement in the voices of all those people there. She's coming, she's coming, she'll be here, she's here, she's here. And the next thing, I saw Marjorie come through what I can only describe as the entrance to a tunnel that I hadn't seen before, but suddenly there was this amazing tunnel, and every one of the people sort of stood up and welcomed her, wrapped their arms around her and welcomed her, and were so joyful to see her. And I think that was perhaps the most astounding for me was when I knew Marjorie. Marjorie was my patient for a long time. She was jaundiced. She had cancer of the liver as well as other places. So her skin was very yellowed. She wore a wig most of the time. Her face was very, very swollen, and her whole body was swollen, in fact. And her face was sort of this weird yellowish grey colour. When I saw her come through the tunnel, at first, I didn't even know who she was. I did not recognize her because I'd never known Marjorie other than sick. And here was this woman with blonde, shining hair and red, rosy cheeks, healthy sparkle in her eyes. And it took me a minute or two to realize who it was. So does that answer? I think that answers the question. We do know, those of us in the spirit world, we know when someone is arriving. We're able to greet them, join them, be there for them. I'll often have someone in the spirit world say to me, will you tell him or her, mine will be the hand that reaches out to help her across. So I know that God allows us these moments. I know that it's a joyful experience. I know that it's an amazing thing to watch, and I was very privileged to watch as Marjorie was welcomed by her family. But I still remember the quiet hush, the whispering of voices getting louder and louder and more excited. She's coming, she's coming, she's coming. So I know that we, all of us, will have something incredible like that happen to us when we pass into the spirit world. Chris.
Cheryl says, I have been reading about pet cloning. It's
Pet
interesting.
what?
Cloning.
Oh, cloning. Oh.
Yes. It's interesting, but wouldn't it be a different soul in the cloned body?
Well, I don't even know. Oh gosh. Yes, it is a fascinating subject, isn't it? But it's not the one that we're going to talk about today. It's too big a subject, and I'm not even sure where I'd go with it or how I would even begin to explain. There are many people who think that cloning is an abomination. There are others who think that it's an amazing thing and a miracle and so on and so forth. And I think, if you, for instance, if you have been in an accident and you've lost your legs or your arms or something like that, I think cloning is, one of those things that can help us to maybe to clone body parts. Is it right? Is it should we do it? Shouldn't we do it? Far too big a subject for a show like this. So we're going to move along. Chris.
Judith says, I've been watching the 9/11 tributes this morning, and yes, prayers help them and help us too.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, darling. Appreciate that.
Gary's responding back to your comments earlier.
Yes.
So he says, okay, the sweet was the people there. The sour was walking out the back door of the church and seeing clothes still hanging in the trees.
Yes, very painful. Very painful, but bittersweet. So I understand, Gary, what you're saying. And for those of you wondering, what are we talking about? Gary was one of those fantastic and amazing volunteers who went to help in 9/11. And I think it's fair to say, Gary, you saw things that you never wanted to see and never will forget, but also many joyful things, wonderful things too. Okay.
Betta's on, saying, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Who is this?
Betta.
Betta. Good morning, Betta.
Who is my guardian angel? Are they a man or a woman? And from the spirit world, my loved ones, what do they think of me?
Are you okay? Sorry, we got a bit of pain going on. Are you all right? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Betta, that I do understand why you would ask the question. Actually, it's many questions rolled into one. So I'm not even going to begin to attempt to answer. I think you know who your guardian angel is, and you do have a sense of spirit, and you do have a sense of wonder in this wonderful world of ours. So the rest of it, I'm going to leave you to figure it out. Chris.
All right, Fernanda's on.
Hi.
Hello, Rosemary. I hope you are well. I just lost my pet dog, Peggy, and miss her so much.
Oh.
She was 17 years old, and I want to know where she is. Also, I do feel so bad because the vet told me the best solution was to put her to sleep, and I don't feel good about it. Am I ever going to see my Peggy again?
The answer to your question is let's there are a few questions in there. Yes, of course you will see her again. Did you not read what I wrote in the newsletter this month? an amazing story that happened to me. Um, Amazing in that even the puppies that I had years ago actually came to visit us. If you haven't read that story, you need to go to the Facebook page, or you need to sign up for the newsletter and we can send it to you. Right, Chris? Can we do that?
Yeah, if she emails the office, I'd be happy to send it.
Okay, all right. So, first, let me say also, I'm so sorry for your loss. However, okay, now let me think. I'm trying to count how many puppies I've had that I've had to make that decision to have put down. So, uh, definitely Rosie, Nino, Feather, Cachorro. Oh gosh. um, yes, many. I've had to make that decision. I've every single time it has been painful for me. Every single time it has been a heartfelt decision. Every single time I've taken my time again and again and again. My puppy Karma years ago actually had to tell me, come on, you got to do this. It's the right time. Um, we feel badly. We feel, who wants to do that? We don't want to do such a thing. We never want to make those decisions. However, why you're feeling guilty, my darling, is beyond me. You should be proud of yourself. You should be grateful that you have the strength to take the decision to allow your puppy, your beautiful pet, to pass peacefully. When we take on our animals, whether it's a dog, a cat, a hamster, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, whether we take on our pets, we take them on knowing, because you have to know, don't you? You can't have a dog or a cat or something and not know that at some point in the future you may have to make a decision for that animal that they can't make for themselves. It's called responsibility. And if you are a person who does not make the decision when it's necessary, you're the person who will cause more harm and more pain and more angst for that pet. I don't understand why you're feeling guilty. Pain, loss, without a doubt. Regret, without a doubt. Regret that we couldn't have them longer, without a doubt. Um, the loneliness of not having them with you, without a doubt. But you need to cut out the guilt thing, my lovely, because that was something that you undertook to do. That decision was something you undertook to do when you first had that beautiful, beautiful little cuddly thing in your arms. And that's a good thing. And you obviously have the strength. You should be very proud of yourself that you were able to make that decision that was necessary for your animal. I do get so upset sometimes when I see people who are hanging on to their pets and they don't want to make the decision because they don't want to be without their puppies. Well, guess what? None of us do. But when you look at your animal and you see that little animal in pain and suffering, is there a choice actually? There shouldn't be a choice. It's not about you, it's about them. And you did that good, right decision. So please, please, yes, grieve. Absolutely, you should. Miss that little thing. You'll see them again. I know you will. But you're entitled to miss them. You're entitled to grieve. You're entitled to cry. You're entitled to feel badly about the fact that you don't have them anymore. But you are not entitled to feel guilty about making a decision that you had to make. So please, get a grip, Chris.
Lorraine is on.
Hi,
Lorraine
Lorraine.
Lorraine's asking about her sister. So she says, "My sister passed 2 years ago June. She had cerebral palsy and mental disability from birth. She died at age 66. She was a very strong-willed person who tried to live a life as if she had no disability, even
Oh,
having a child. My
Wonderful.
question is she free in the spirit world of these disabilities? And
Yeah.
did my parents and her husband greet her when she arrived in heaven?
Well, I'm going to tell you a little story. Who is this? Who's writing this?
This is Lorraine.
Lorraine, listen to me. Okay, so you'll like this. I know you'll like it. First of all, Grahil has his hand on my shoulder and she tells me to tell you that your sister is free of pain, free of hurt, and excited and thrilled. Didn't you just hear my last story about Marjorie? All of her family surround her, and there is no more hurt or pain on a physical level at all. Now, I was having a conversation with my darling boy last night. We were snuggling in bed, and we were watching a movie, and it happened that the movie was about ghosts in some way. So Reese was asking me, "How does it work, Mosey? And what do you believe?" And he was asking me, do ghosts have bodies? Do they actually go through all these sorts of things? He's 8 years old. He's a curious little boy. And so, uh, because we've been having all these issues with, you just heard my daughter, she just hit her hand, hit her finger inadvertently. And you just heard her gasp. She's in pain. I'm in pain with my foot. So poor Reese is having to deal with all this stuff, and I can't move my shoulder very easily for whatever reason. Anyway, we're not going to go into that. But Reese has been surrounded in the last week with me hobbling along, and all the bruising and the swelling and all of that stuff. And he's had to look at his mummy and see she's fingers bandaged, she's been in the hospital, and so on and so forth. So he's been dealing with all of this trauma. So here we are, and he's talking to me about ghosts and so on. And I said to him, just last night, obviously in preparation for your question this morning, I said to him, well, I'll tell you one thing about the etheric body. I was talking to him about the spirit body, the etheric body that we all have when we pass into the spirit world. And he said, so there's no skeleton and there's no bones. And I said, no, because that's the flesh, and that's the stuff that we have when we're here. We have this physical body. But when we die, we have the etheric body. And I said, I'll tell you something about this etheric body. Shall I, darling? And he said, yes. And I said, there are no boo-boos. And he smiled from ear to ear. He said, so if somebody is really sick and then they die, they're not sick anymore? I said, no. And they don't hurt anymore, and there's no pain anymore. So there you are. I'm telling you what I told my 8-year-old grandson yesterday. The etheric body has no boo-boos. Okay, Chris.
Judith says, I have many relatives and pets who have passed on to the next dimension of life. Your story about how people are met with such love makes me feel so good for my family and
Oh,
for
great.
myself eventually.
Great. Well, Judith, you're welcome. And makes me feel good too. Okay, Chris.
Maggie wants you to know she has good news. She's in the process of getting into a house. We know she had a
Oh,
quick turnaround for having to move out, remember?
I know. Yay. Yay. We didn't doubt it, darling. We knew you'd be fine. I think you sort of knew you'd be fine too, but thank you for sharing that with us. We're absolutely thrilled. Chris.
Okay, we're coming right up to time too, Rosemary, just to give you a heads up. Um,
Okay.
Mark and Vicky are having their own little conversation in the chat room.
Are they now?
They are. And Mark is saying, I've always known in my heart of hearts that Rosemary is the real deal. I don't feel passing, and I also know I will not be alone. My spirit guide, whom Rosemary shared, had will be with me along with loved ones who have passed.
Okay. I feel a little bit like a voyeur. Are we sort of listening into somebody else's conversation?
Well, the rest of the conversation between the two is they're wanting others who are showing up in the chat room to know you're the real deal, and they're hoping that their responses, their conversation will be read so other people will have hope in their heart and know that we're never alone.
Well, thank you guys for that. We do appreciate it. Am I the real deal? I think I might be. I think so. I hope so.
The fact that you could even ask that question kind of cracks me up.
Well, I'm a very skeptical person, so I understand why people should be skeptical. Okay, do we have anything else, Chris?
Sort of wrapping it up here, Lorraine thanks you for the response that you just had. And Betta says she thinks her guardian angel is a woman. She doesn't know, but she has the sensation. I guess she's looking for some kind of confirmation.
You always better always go with your instincts. Anything else, Chris?
Fernanda wraps this up with, thank you so much, Rosemary. The last question, if possible, do you know if my Peggy is happy? Fernanda was the one that had the puppy that just passed.
I think, I'm sorry, I've got some crinkling in the background. Do I know if Peggy is happy? Is that what the question was?
Yes.
I'm glad it's the last question, because you all know that I lost my little one only a few months ago. And I've seen them all. I've seen them all together. And I wrote actually for the newsletter because my darling boy Reese had a birthday. We had a little birthday party for Piper, my daughter's puppy and Reese's puppy, who was, I think she was, what was she, 13 or 14 when she passed anyway. And it was her birthday. So we all celebrated that. And we had a whole lot of friends who came to the birthday party unexpectedly, all of them puppies, which was an amazing thing. If you want to know more about that, it was in the newsletter this week. If you want to get the newsletter every week, you need to subscribe. Go to our website, rosemaryaltea.com, and you'll find many other things there, lots of little videos and things and stories and so on. But if you would like the newsletter because you weren't subscribed and you didn't get it, there's a story about the puppies and how they all came to the birthday party. Again, unexpectedly, if you'd like to write to Chris, K-R-I-S, Chris at rosemaryaltea.com, and she'll let you know where you can find it. What else? If you want to know any more about anything at all, again, email us, Chris or Rosemary at rosemaryaltea.com. Is your puppy happy? Let me think about it for a whole, I don't even have to think about it. The answer is a resounding, absolutely yes. Free of pain, happy, and Grateful tells me to tell you, and in doggy heaven. How about that? So there you have it, everybody. All right, that's it for today. I'd like to say thank you to Chris, as usual, for doing an amazing job. I'd like to say thank you to all of you for joining us. I'd especially like to say thank you to Grey Eagle, who, as you all know, is always with me. We shall be doing this all over again. We shall be hopefully here back on Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, if you need to know what else we're up to, please check us out. Check out our website, rosemaryaltea.com. We shall be hopefully trying to do some off-the-cuff stuff, but we don't quite know what's going on here in my household at the moment, whether or not things will be getting better, but we're hoping that they will get better. So we're leaving anything else unplanned for now, but watch out for us because you never know when we're going to pop in and out. I'm not going to say we've got a story time next week. I'm going to hope that we have a story time next week. It might be that we have a story time from the airport or not. We shall have to wait and see. we're a little bit in flux at the moment. So we definitely will be here next Thursday morning, and maybe we'll have more information for you at that time. Please, everybody, thank you once again for joining us. We love having you. I love my groupies. So thank you. And please, everybody, have a very, very blessed rest of the day, and have a very blessed weekend, everybody.